welcome back to my channel. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Ninthu and I post true crime and chit chat videos twice a week and occasionally post vlogs and fashion related content. So if that's the type of content you're into, make sure to hit that bell button so that you stay notified every time I post. So today we are actually going to be discussing the incredibly heinous murder of a 12-year-old boy over a game called Tibia. Hey guys, so this is Ninthu after filming, and basically I had to film this video twice because I didn't like my camera angle and like how I looked, and basically the one I'm posting is also one of the ones I don't like, but I didn't want to film again because it's just too much work, you know? So yeah, just literally disregard that and just use your listening ears to listen to the case. But yeah, without further ado, let's get straight into it. Now, usually in my true crime videos, I like to give insight into who the perpetrator was and who the victim was. However, upon researching this case, I couldn't find a lot of information about who the victim was aside from this case. So I won't be able to give you guys a good insight into his life, but I will be able to give you guys a quick rundown of how the perpetrator was connected to the victim himself. Okay, so the perpetrator's name was Daniel Felipe Petri, and he was born in Brazil in 1991. It is said that he had actually grown up in a very toxic environment, which had caused him to develop a lot of violent tendencies along with anger issues. And this had actually gotten so bad that his parents had actually made him take part in a psychiatric evaluation that included some form of therapy. However, Daniel actually ended up ending this treatment by his own right, so there wasn't anything discovered about him conclusively. And around this time, he had also dropped out of school. And it is said that after he had done this, things progressively got worse and he wasn't really able to control his emotions anymore. Because he wasn't in school either, he was at home a lot in his lonesome. However, while at home, he did gain an interest in watching TV and surfing the internet, which is pretty typical for a teenager to do. And while surfing the internet is when he found an online gaming community called Tibia. Okay, so Tibia is a 2D massively multiplayer online role-playing game with a lot of text-based elements. The game's development had actually begun in 1995 as a hobby project for 4 German students, and they were under the name of CIP Productions. And in January of 1997 is when the first online server went live. So the game itself was described to be an open world concept that encouraged for discovery and exploration. And I don't want to go too much into detail about this game, but if you guys have ever played RuneScape, that's what this game kind of reminds me of. However, they do have their differences, so don't quote me on that, but that's what it reminded me of when I was doing my research. Anyways, one thing that is worth mentioning about Tibia is its online currency called Tibia coins, which is what players can basically use to buy things from the in-game web shop. So basically, players can either purchase the coins using real money, or they can just play the game and gain the coins through that, and they can just basically use it on anything in the web shop. So anyways, getting back to Daniel, it is said that he actually found a lot of comfort in online gaming, and it is through the Tibia servers that he had actually initially hooked up with our 12-year-old victim named Gabriel Kuhn. So Gabriel Kuhn was actually born in 1995, and he lived in Belha Central, which is a town not far from Blumenau in Mediaval, Santa Catarina state in southern Brazil. And this is actually also where Daniel was said to have lived. Now, Gabriel is said to have been the eldest son of a stable family, and he is said to have been a good student and have been well educated. So it is said that Daniel and Gabriel had actually developed a pretty good friendship, and they would often game together online. And it is also said that Daniel would actually go over to Gabriel's house often to just chill with Gabriel, despite Gabriel's mother getting bad vibes from him. Their friendship seemed to be going very smooth. So then sometime in this friendship, Gabriel had asked Daniel if he could borrow 20,000 Tibia coins, and he had promised Daniel that he would pay him back. Now, because their friendship was going so well, Daniel gave him the coins and didn't really hesitate or question it at all. However, things start to get a bit messy between the two because not soon after, Gabriel ends up backing out from his side of the deal, and he ends up being quite adamant that he's not going to pay Daniel back. So at this point, Daniel's emotions were very uncontrollable, and he would basically just tell Gabriel every single day that he needs to pay him back, and just kept bickering Gabriel about it. And eventually Gabriel was basically over it, and he ended up blocking Daniel off of his virtual contact list, and he ceased any communication with him. Now this was the turning point for Daniel because this enraged him, and at this point he just vowed to get revenge on Gabriel. So then at 9:30 a.m. on July 23rd, 2007, Daniel ends up calling Gabriel's mother and asking what time she'll be home that day. However, Gabriel's mother ends up telling him that she won't be home for a while because she's out of town. So then Daniel ends up going to Gabriel's house to confront him. However, when he goes over and knocks on the door, Gabriel refuses to open the door. So this is when Daniel starts basically saying that he came to apologize and he wants to put all of this behind them, and Gabriel simply just needs to open the door so they can just communicate all of this and get it out of the way. And guys, just a side note, I just want to preface that 20,000 Tibia coins is only worth $1.75 USD, so it's honestly not that much money in perspective. And I also heard that it's really easy to gain 20,000 coins on the Tibia game, but I'm not sure if this is true or not because I don't play the game itself. But anyways, unfortunately, 12-year-old Gabriel does exactly what Daniel wanted and opens the door, and this is when Daniel forces himself into the house, locks the door behind him, and begins to relentlessly beat Gabriel up. And during the assault, Daniel had actually dragged Gabriel into his bedroom and basically raped him so violently that there was reportedly bloodstains all over the bed. So then after that, Daniel ends up pulling Gabriel's pants back up, and Gabriel is just crying at this point, and he tells Daniel that he is going to tell his mom everything that Daniel did to him when she gets home. However, Daniel had already been prepared because he already called his mother and knew that she wouldn't be home for a while, so he wasn't really pressed by this or concerned at all. So then Daniel ends up grabbing a power cord from the gaming console and wrapping it around Gabriel's neck, and while doing this he also began to rape him once again. And while raping him, he still had the power cord tightly around Gabriel's neck until Gabriel was no longer moving. So at this point, Gabriel was lying in his bed, lifeless so it seems, and beaten up. And at this point, Daniel makes a plan that he's actually going to put Gabriel's body in this little crawl space that was above the door. However, the only problem with his plan was that Gabriel's body was too heavy for Daniel to actually carry and put into that crawl space. So Daniel had actually gone searching into the kitchen and he found a knife, and then he proceeds to the garage where he finds a hacksaw and he brings them both back and he begins to cut off one of Gabriel's legs. So basically his goal in doing this was to decrease the weight so that he would be able to carry Gabriel's body and put it up in that crawl space. So basically his strategy was to cut through all of Gabriel's flesh using the knife and then use the hacksaw on his bone. So Daniel had actually almost cut off Gabriel's entire right leg when somehow Gabriel regained consciousness and began screaming in horror. And at this point, Daniel got really excited because he knew at this point that Gabriel was able to feel all the pain that he was inflicting. So what he decides to do at this point is to change angles and to saw even harder and even faster than he was before. So then eventually Daniel was able to detach both of Gabriel's legs, and he had essentially just cut the 12-year-old in half. And then Daniel basically tries to put Gabriel's body into the crawl space like he had planned with the help of a cord wrapped around Gabriel's torso. However, he was unsuccessful, so at this point he ends up deciding to abuse and beat the upper half of Gabriel's body, and he actually ends up carving some symbols from the Tibia game itself into Gabriel's chest. And because he was unable to tamper with the crime scene and get Gabriel's body into the crawl space itself, he ends up just leaving the house. And basically the way he had left the scene was Gabriel's upper half of his body was right under the crawl space, like near the door, and then a few feet away was his two legs along with the hacksaw that was all bloody, and the hallway was literally just like all blood. And guys, just a side note, I don't suggest you guys search this case up because it is so easy to stumble on the pictures of the body itself and the entire scene, because for some reason authorities felt like it should be okay to put online. But yeah, don't search it up if you're lighthearted, and even if you don't have the intention of seeing the pictures, don't search it up because you're going to stumble on them. Okay, so not long after Daniel had left the house, Gabriel's little brother returns home and he finds the bloody hallway along with his brother's decapitated body, which is so traumatizing. But the first thing he ends up doing is calling his mother, and he ends up getting a neighbor to call the police. So when authorities do end up arriving, they find the chat log with the argument between the two boys, and they end up logging this as evidence, and at this point they kind of know who's responsible for the murder. So then in the post-mortem report, it states that Gabriel was actually alive throughout the entire ordeal, and it is believed that he had actually lost consciousness after his first leg was fully decapitated because of shock and blood loss. It is also said that it is believed that Daniel had necrophiled the corpse. So then Daniel Petrie is arrested shortly after, and he himself admitted to the entire murder, and he had zero remorse while doing so. And authorities were even said to have been surprised with how much detail Daniel was able to recount about his actions and his feelings towards Gabriel that afternoon. And it is said that during the investigation, the only time that Daniel had even gotten angry or screamed was when he was denying claims of homosexuality, even though medical examiners found conclusive evidence that Gabriel had been sodomized multiple times. So then Daniel was placed in a juvenile delinquency center to be sentenced, and in September of 2007, Judge Alvaro Pereira de Andrade ends up sentencing him to 3 years of socio-educational punishment. And it was also said that even in prison, Daniel still vowed his revenge on Gabriel, and when the judge had even asked him if he had any last words or any words of remorse for Gabriel's family, Daniel ends up saying, "Gabriel was a coward and a thief. He burns in hell right now where I sent him, and when I die, I will find him in hell and finish my revenge." Anyways, fast forward to 2010, because this is when 19-year-old Daniel Petrie is released from the juvenile detention center after not serving any hard time in prison. And conditions for his release actually state that he see a probation officer regularly. However, ever since he had been released, he hadn't seen a probation officer and his whereabouts have been unknown. So he basically just disappeared. Anyways guys, that concludes today's video. I know this video wasn't as detailed or as long as some of my other true crime videos, but it's because there wasn't as much information online that I could find about this case. But I do believe that this is one of the more gruesome cases that I've covered so far. So let me know what you guys think, and if you guys have any other recommendations for cases, leave them down in the comments or literally just message me. But yeah, that concludes today's video, and I'll talk to you guys in my next true crime video, and like always, keep shining.